Hey, it's Kyle. We're 10 toes in with Lou from the Get a Grip podcast.
Yes, sir.
I like having Lou here because he is the first. It was almost a year ago. It was like last summer.
Yeah.
I went up to Ohio, and Get a Grip was the first podcast to reach out and have me on after I got out of prison.
Yeah.
And we both grown a lot. You guys are taking off like a rocket.
Yeah, dude. It's going well. I think like some of the most rewarding stuff for us is like there was one comment where a guy saw the video that I had a criminal record and he knew I worked at a jail, and it gave him the confidence to go apply at a jail, and he got the job. So
I want to talk to you about working in a jail and having a criminal record.
Yeah.
But first, I want to talk to you about something else rewarding. You went and spoke to your kid's school?
Yeah, so I speak in schools. I'm getting a lot of invites for that now. I do 8th graders and 10th graders.
And what do you talk about? Addiction or?
Yeah, the 8th graders, it's like health class. So it's not like Scared Straight because I don't.
No. Kids don't go to prison.
Yeah, I just don't believe in that. So, but what it is I tell my story, my lived experience, and like I grew up in an affluent community. And in affluent communities, people think that like addiction, crime, all that shit doesn't happen there, but it does. And like all these parents and kids think it can't happen to them. So like my whole thing is like, listen, when I went to that first party and had, a couple beers and some shots and some weed, I didn't know that I was genetically predisposed to alcoholism or addiction, right?
Right.
So for these kids, it's like, is it worth it? And then on top of that, they also don't know that if they get like an Adderall to study or to cram for an exam and get pulled over, that's a fucking felony.
I know. It's crazy.
They don't know that.
And then, when they do it in college, they're adults.
Yeah. Like, and so like you've got 8th graders, like you tell them something like that and they're like, damn. And so I lay it out there. I'll like compare. I'll be like, okay, say I go for a job but I've got a criminal record, and you go for a job but you have a degree. It's the same job. I've got sales experience. It's a sales job. Who's getting it? You are, because fucking you don't have a criminal record. Like, it's crazy.
If you're smart, you're gonna do the
like,
one that sells
it's crazy.
Better,
like, yeah, but it's. I mean, and maybe sales is like a bad example,
no.
but
But
like,
you're absolutely right.
That's what it is. That's the truth. Like, they will look past the guy with the criminal record and go for the kid fresh out of college, even if I have the experience. It's just what it is.
So how did you get involved in talking to kids?
It was like this weird thing where I wanted to make this. It's kind of like an amends to my hometown, like, because I speak to parents too.
Right.
Because like, I mean, I fucking sold drugs in that community. I've stolen shit in that community. So there's so.
And do you still live in the same community that you grew up in?
I do now, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, like I've done so much bad stuff. It was like I got to give back somehow to make it right. Yeah, exactly. Balance it out.
Okay, so you got into some trouble.
I did.
Drugs.
I did. Yeah, and they're all my felonies were 3 drug possessions, which are only F5s, and then a conveyance charge. And then I had like a huge misdemeanor sheet. So what that meant for me was just like a shitload of county time. And a lot of people say county is worse than prison. I can't tell you that one way or the other, because the only prison I've been to was minimum security.
Right.
But I've done probably 1.5 years county time, and 5 month stretch. That's a lot for county jail, and it was all drugs, heroin, crack cocaine. I was shooting it, selling it. I mean, I was bad off. Yeah, it was.
Then you became a correctional officer?
So, yeah, and I'll tell you how that happened. So, I remember when I went to court for my felonies, my judge told me, she said, since these are your first felonies, we're going to give you probation, which is what you want to hear, right?
Right.
And then she said, but if you violate, I'm going to send you to prison for the maximum amount of time possible, which was 5 years.
Yeah, bring your toothbrush. We know that.
And I knew I was going to violate. I knew it. I knew I was going to get out. I was going to get high. I was going to piss dirty, and I was going to violate. So when they took me back to the holding cell behind the courtroom, I asked my public defender for help, and they put me in this drug court program. Now, I still had to plea out to the felonies, but now I'm just in this drug court program, right? And so I started doing that, and I'm working through the phases, whatever. I graduated that in 2018. At the time, I was doing food, so like I started like as a busboy in like nice restaurants, because I knew if I could work my way up to a server, I could make some decent money. And I did that, and then COVID hit in 2020, and I went back to my judge, and I said, hey, would you mind writing me a reference letter to work at this correctional facility? And he did. And I remember during the interview, it was the director and the deputy director who interviewed me, which is not normal. And they hired me. They gave me a shot.
Because of the judge's recommendation?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you got a guy, obviously I clean up different, or I don't want to say different, but I clean up okay. And I remember walking through the facility again, like as a CO, and like watching the inmates look at me like I'm a CO, and it tripped me out because I'm them. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
yeah, of course.
I'm you, like really, but you don't know it.
So was this at the same institution you were, or same facility you were at?
It is.
As an inmate?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So that was trippy too. And I remember I took over for a CO who ran her unit like shit. The inmates ran the unit, so I had like my work was cut out for me. His consistency is really like one of the biggest things when you're locked up. You want to know what to expect every day.
Every day.
You don't want it to be different. You don't fucking want, no.
I mean, if you're going to be a hard ass, you got to be a hard ass every day.
Right.
If you're going to be soft, you got to be soft every day.
Right. And my whole thing was like, there's times in life where you take things seriously, like job interviews, for instance, right? And then there's times in life where you bullshit and you laugh and you have fun. Right. And so that's how I kind of presented it, and like they understood that. And so when it came time to go to chow, they shut their fucking mouths and they went down to chow silent, and I had no issues. And like the rec yard, they respected me because I was there, right? They knew I was there. Like I got so much respect. It was bizarre. Like I could diffuse situations. I could diffuse fights without having to put hands on people. Like just because, I don't know. I had been there. I'd walked in their shoes, and like their whole thing is like, you don't fucking know me. You've never but I had, and the other staff hadn't.
So what about the other staff? Like, how did they receive you as
yeah. So
because that's what's going on. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you specifically is because my big thing is federal prison with federal prison tips. And about 2 weeks ago, Josh Smith, who is a former federal inmate, he did 5 years in Kentucky on federal drug charges, was named the deputy director of the BOP.
I mean, I think that's one of the best decisions they could have made.
I agree too, and a lot of inmates agree. But we're getting pushback from. We have a lot of staff that talks to us on the condition of anonymity, and then we get inmates that send us texts and stuff on their jacks and say, this unit manager said she ain't working for no felon. So like, how did
there were certain staff members that just straight up looked at me like in disgust, basically. Like they didn't fuck with me, and that's fine. I don't care. I don't fucking care. Then don't talk to me.
Were they waiting for you to like bring contraband in?
Maybe, yeah, but that's reasonable, right? That's a reasonable thought that I'm gonna start fucking bringing in contraband or doing something to make money. But like for me, I was just happy to work for the county and have like a decent salary and like a pension and benefits. So like I wasn't gonna fuck that up. They didn't know that though. But yeah, there was a couple of them that looked at me sideways, and then there were some of them that were there when I was there that were now my colleagues, and they helped me. They taught me things. They showed me things. Obviously, I think that going to jail is the best training I had
for becoming a CO.
Yeah, compared to what they gave me, because I know how they're thinking. Right. I know exactly what you're thinking. I know what you're doing. I know it was the best training I could have gotten. I mean, way better than what they gave me. not that it was bad, but like, and then I got promoted, which, white shirt, lieutenant, whatever you want to call it, where I oversaw the entire security for the whole facility. And then I got promoted to what was called behavior supervisor, and I ran a unit, and that was my unit. So I oversaw the COs and I oversaw the inmates. And when guys would have behavioral issues, they'd come into my office, and they're not getting like I'm not pulling out a piece of paper with like cognitive behavioral therapy shit. Like, no, I'm going to be like, what the fuck were you thinking? Like, I'm going to talk to you like an adult and like, bro, what are you doing? Do you want to get your shit together, or do you want to live like this forever? Make up your mind. Because you can do this the rest of your life if you want. I'm going home tonight, dog. I'd say shit like that. And like, that's fucked up, but it's the truth. And they got it. And like, we've had plenty of guys from that facility when I worked there on our show, and they all say the same thing. Like, you inspired me, because I would tell my story. Like, I didn't care. I really did not care. I would tell my story. I would tell it.
So it wasn't a big secret to inmates coming in. Oh,
no,
that's Lou, used to be
no.
An inmate.
Once. I mean, I remember one dude got moved to a different prison. Parole came and got him, and I cuffed him up and I walked him out, and he said, "Lou, if it wasn't you right now throwing cuffs on me, this would be going down a lot different." And
I can respect that.
Yeah.
As a former inmate myself, I can respect that. And that's the thing, the key to what they're doing. And so I was talking to a woman that used to be she used to be the general counsel for the entire BOP. She's a good friend of mine, talking about how in some states they do allow formerly incarcerated people to work for the DOC or whatever agency it is, or the sheriff's department.
Yep.
They have, they might be under a microscope because you had the bad problems.
Of course.
But, what people don't realize with Josh and the BOP is that the BOP has his PSR. They have all of his court files. They know everything. They know more about this guy than they know about the guys that are, in there. And
but if you're making a decision to hire him, then the case is fuck the case.
Right.
Or, you know what I mean? Because at that point, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
He's got the job. So now we got to train the guy up. And I just think that lived experience would make such a massive difference in so many institutions, any institution, if you had employees that have lived experience. Like, I watched it.
And so here's the problem, Lou. The feds and just about every state in the country have a horrible problem with churn with COs and filling CO
dude,
positions.
that shit's not for everybody.
They have an entire pool of people that have this experience that need a job.
Well, bro, I remember watching it was so fun. The kids who would get out of college with criminal justice degrees, and they'd walk on the unit, and they're like,
I'm not doing this.
They're like shitting their pants, like scared to death. Like, what the fuck is it? What if a fight? What? Oh my God. Terrified. Do you want that guy? Or do you want the guy who's been there and can de-escalate or can maybe help the person not go back? Who do you want?
I see. So obviously you're not doing that anymore.
I'm not.
How did that career end?
So they started to kind of pull recovery out of the facility. Like, they weren't doing, when I was there towards the end, I started pushing for more recovery because I think 90% of those guys have substance abuse issues. And if they don't, the crimes when they committed them, they were fucked up. I didn't like that. They'd do church. They'd bring a church in and do baptisms.
Right.
And it's like, and I joke with guys and be like, oh, you can get baptized and fucking by tomorrow morning, you're going to be right back to square one. Like,
but that's just the reality of it.
Yeah. And so when they started to pull that stuff, I was like, I don't like the direction this is headed. And I had a buddy that was like, come do sales. I know you can kill it in sales. You're a talker. And that's when I left. I did it for 2 years. And honestly, it was my favorite job.
So, and that's one of the things that you were talking about recovery. I see from, the funny thing is when we were talking the other day, you're like, well, I've never been to federal prison, so I can't do federal prison. So I told you what I wanted to talk to you about. But, you know, in the federal prison system, you got like two sides to BOP. You either are on the case management side or the custody side. And had you not left and they had not changed the program, you actually probably would have been great on a case management side.
Yeah, the thing with case management, and they offered me a position, I turned it down, and I'll tell you why, is you have those guys that just don't give a fuck, and they just want out.
Right.
And they want to go back to what they were doing. And I don't really want a caseload of 30 guys or 25 guys or whatever where 70% of them don't give a fuck. If you want to get better, I'll help you. I'll show you how. But if you want to go back out on the streets and commit more crimes, I don't want to fucking sit here and
waste my
fucking time. Because that's all
and
it
that
is.
Makes sense.
Yeah, like it's not. No, it doesn't. I'm not helping anyone. But someone's got to do it.
Yeah.
Just not for me. I'm not gonna sit here and search for housing for you for 3 days straight just for you to fucking on the first day go out, get high, and disappear.
And then come back.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, some of that's like a revolving door.
Oh, 100%.
If you don't nip it in the bud and start and get somebody that's really committed to change.
Yeah.
So going back to that line of thought, you talked about how, you know, you realized that you had addiction issues and all of your charges were drug related. What was your aha moment or your come to Jesus moment where you're like, okay, Lou, I'm not going to do this trouble. I'm not going to do drugs anymore.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily a moment. I mean, I guess I'll give you a moment where I was like, how the fuck did I get here? It was when I was homeless and I was like shooting, dope or whatever I could get my hands on. And it was my first night. Had a sleeping bag, went in the woods, went to sleep, woke up, and it was like pouring down rain at like 3 a.m. And all I had was that sleeping bag, so I pulled it over my head, and I'm getting soaked, obviously. And I was just like, the math didn't add up. I was like, how did you get here? Because like I said, I grew up in an affluent community.
Right.
Like I had a chance to go to college and shit. Like a lot of people don't get that. But when things changed for me is when I started like listening to other people, kind of like when you're little, like when you're a kid and your dad or your mom tells you like, don't do this, but you do it anyway. It's like, maybe if the judge is recommending that I do XYZ, it's because he's seen 5,000 people just like me and he does know better. Or if I'm at a recovery meeting and this dude with 30 years sober tells me to do this, it's because he's fucking got 30 years sober and he knows what he's talking about.
I think a lot of people need to listen more to people like that.
Yeah, dude. Like it that's when it changed, is when I gave up. Like I didn't have all the answers. Lewis ran out of answers. And that was my whole thing. Like I always had an answer for fucking everything. And once I started taking suggestions from other people, and like some people might not like this, but like I saw my judge, I was like, I'm gonna make him an ally. And it fucking got me a job, And then now I've interviewed judges. Like, I want those people on my team.
That makes sense.
I don't want them against me. They're powerful.
Right.
I want them on my team, right? And so that's how I approached it. And I just don't think a lot of people do that. A lot of people are, fuck my probation officer, fuck my judge. Like, and I get it. If you just got sent for 10 years, I get it. Right? But you also did something, right?
Right.
Probably committed a crime to get 10 years.
I mean, I had a hard experience, like something similar to what you're talking about very recently. I went back to prison in 2022 on a violation.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my probation officer butted heads all the time. It's like F
Back
that
and
bitch
forth.
all the time. So about 2 months ago, I got a call from a family, and because we do prison consulting, and they were like, "You were recommended by the person that was my probation officer." And I'm like, and half my brain's
no
like,
way.
Half my brain's like, F that bitch. I'm not doing shit for anybody for her. And the other half was like, oh my God, I've made such a difference.
She
that
recommended
my
you.
probation
Yep.
officer is recommending me.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay.
That has to be a decent feeling. It's got to be a good feeling.
Feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing was a great feeling. I wasn't sure we were going to really talk about it or not, but I can say this because I talked about it on your podcast. I went to prison for stealing millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
On May 17th, Federal Prison Tips made my first legal $1 million ever, and that was a great feeling.
Yeah. And you're
doing
helping
it by
people.
helping the people. We just did a tour of the new place on TikTok, and Nelson from Honor Among Thieves is here, felon. Eddie, who did the recording for you, who also works with all the time, felon. Everybody that's in here, felon. And it was like you were talking about. It's hard to get somebody to give you a chance.
I know.
And what we're doing here with what we're trying to do with our nonprofit and entrepreneurship to reduce recidivism is give those people that have never. You have to be a felon to be involved with what we're doing.
Yeah, no, dude. I mean, I remember my first job out of jail was at a pizza shop, and I remember when I went into that job, I was like, all right, I got to work twice as hard because I've got a criminal record, and I did, and they thought I would be a good manager. They being my general manager and assistant general manager. When I went to the district manager, nope, shut it down as soon as he heard the word felony.
When I was at the halfway house the first time around, I worked at this place called Huey Magoo's, and they wanted me to be the front of the house manager. Front of the house manager was in charge of the cashiers and everything and doing the jobs.
Yep.
And everybody knew because I did it in my hometown where I've been on the TV and the news and I got movies about me. And then it was like, oh my God, you're going to let Kyle touch the safe? The owner of the restaurant was like, we don't make enough money for Kyle to steal. And I mean, I wouldn't steal anyway from somebody who was willing to give me a chance. But, it's hard to find those people out there.
Dude, it's so frustrating. It's and then again, that goes back to the kids. That's why I tell them these things. Like, just think about it before you go to a party. Because I didn't know I was going to be alcoholic. I didn't know that once I put that shit in my system, I was fucked. It was over. It was over that day. And, like, some people die.
And it's like, so when you look at your Facebook, if I didn't know you, if I looked at your LinkedIn, I see a reputable looking young man that works for a major media company in a decent sized city in a family, right? You had a kid and everything.
If you looked at my LinkedIn, you'd be like, this is a nice young man.
And you would have no idea
Not a clue
about any of this.
Not a clue. Nope. If I gave you my resume, like, no, you would have no idea.
And so let's go back to like how we met. We met on your podcast. What's the name of your podcast?
Get a Grip. Get a Grip.
How long have you guys been doing it for?
A little over a year now.
And you've really taken off since last summer.
Yeah, we're doing well. It's another one of those things, dude, where like, I don't know, man. I don't mind working for other people. I don't think a lot of people, sometimes your boss sucks.
Of course.
Right? But to have something that's ours, that's helping people, that is like working and we're like seeing growth is so cool, and it doesn't feel like work. Like, I'll do this shit all day. I'll edit all day. I'll whatever. It doesn't feel like work. The podcast has, it's doing well now.
And you guys do a little bit more than just prison and recovery, right? You do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, we do. We didn't want to like box ourselves in to just like recovery, but I call it more of like underdog stories. So we've done like human trafficking victims.
Yeah, it's very similar to Kevin Lanning.
Yeah, like
kind of content.
Yeah, kind of, yes. Human trafficking, prison, jail, addiction, recovery, you name it. If you got a story to tell, we'll listen.
So I'll also tell you this here on our show, because I had talked about it before. Next Tuesday, I'm going to do the Imbic show.
What is that?
Yeah, I'm going to go do the show with Ian Big.
Oh, you're doing Bick shit. Oh, Ian Bick. Okay.
There was a little bit of a riffraff. Kevin Lanning, when I did Kevin Lanning.
Yeah, you told me that.
He asked me specifically about it, got Ian on the phone, got us to squash whatever it was, And then Ian went to do a really big top secret project.
Yeah,
I think he's going to
know.
talk about soon.
Yeah.
So we got blown off, but we're going to go back June 24th. So everybody's all happy. Everybody's all one big happy prison and recovery family.
Tell your story, and it's a big platform, man. So a lot of people will get to hear your story. But I mean, then again, you've been on HBO shows and things like that. So
Well, I got to a point where like I had some riffraff on Facebook in 2022, and I've been really leading the charge on the prison consultant side for everybody to work together because the rising tide moves all the ships and all the boats and all that stuff. And me and we've been allies to this whole thing. Kevin's been a great help. Nelson, obviously.
Yep.
I mean, there's no reason for any bickering or anything like that. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing too.
Yeah.
And helping each other out in the background.
It's so weird because it is like, really, we're in competition, kind of.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because like you want the viewership. But at the end of the day, does it really fucking matter if you're helping the next guy?
No,
not really.
And we're all got our own different niches. And for me, like, again, when I found out you were coming to do Nelson's show or do Honor Among Thieves, I was like, Lewis is the one guy that I could talk to about what it's like to work both sides of the fence, and as it relates to what's going on in the federal prison system right now. I think, just like you do, I think it's a really good move that they have somebody that's been incarcerated.
Yeah.
It's eye-opening.
Dude, if these jails would just give some of these people with felony records chances, they would be shocked at the impact it would make.
And I think they'd actually meet their goals of
but
reducing recidivism. And
I agree, but you're gonna have your shitbags.
Yep.
That are felons that are gonna bring in contraband and it's gonna happen. But that happens with normal staff, bro.
No matter what.
There was normal staff. Like I knew fucking one of the guys on my unit was bringing in fucking Suboxone strips, and he didn't have a criminal record.
Nope.
But that fucking unit took a shit when those strips hit the unit because everyone's getting high. They think the inmates thinks they run the unit again. Fucking, you know what I mean?
Of course.
As a correction officer, my job is to make sure the units run properly. And I'm just big on like, this is a consequence, and it's a consequence because of something you did. Don't fucking deny it, or don't act like you didn't do it, and laugh and joke and have fun when the time is right. But when it's time to fucking do the things that you need to do, you got to do them.
Do them and get home.
Because you're in jail.
If you do them, you can go home.
Yeah.
And you can leave.
Exactly. You don't go to prison on accident.
No.
I'm sorry, you don't. You do not.
You did something to end up there.
Yes.
Whether it's state or local.
99% of the time. I'm sure that there's like
that one guy.
The one unfortunate guy that got fucked.
You'd be surprised how many people call me and say, my husband shouldn't be in prison.
Yeah, but like, you did something.
Always.
All
right, Lou, where can people find you online?
At official Get a Grip podcast on every platform: Spotify, YouTube, TikTok. Our link tree really is the best place, and that's on our TikTok and YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Yeah.
Thank you for making the trek down here to South Florida.
Dude, of course.
Hopefully you can come back for good. That would be awesome.
I would love that.
All right, stay tuned. We'll be back with more 10 Toes podcast. I'm Kyle. Follow me on Federal Prison Tips.